Hi, this is Megan, and in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to use some different size square pieces to create what I call a nested square. We'll then use that nested square as whole pieces and cutting them up in some various ways, and I'm going to show you how to do 3 different borders. So there are directions in the file section of the group, so you'll want to make sure you go print those out, and they hopefully will give you all of the information you need. I'm just going to go ahead and walk you through a couple of steps here to kind of help supplement what written directions are on the printout. So we'll go ahead and we'll get started. The sizes that we are going to be using is going to start off with a 2-inch square, alternate to a second color, coming down to 1.5. I'm repeating my colors, so I just have a 1-inch square and then coming back down here to a small 1/2-inch square. The first border that I'm going to show you that we are going to make is we are going to need a total of 5 whole squares. So I've already made 4 of them. And then I'm going to show you how I put together these squares. It's really, really easy. You will just want to be generous with your adhesive. So on my 1.5-inch square, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put on quite a bit of repositionable adhesive. And I'm just going to center it as best I can. I'm just going to visually center it. I'm not going to worry about measuring. You'll have about 1/4 inch all the way around. And I played around with the measurements on this in terms of what sizes, and I really feel starting off at 2 inches for your big square, and then coming down a 1/2 inch smaller for each of the squares as you come up to make the nested squares. That 1/2 inch gives you that nice equal 1/4 inch border all the way around each piece. And the 2 inches, going no bigger than 2 inches means that we're going to have some ability to rotate and use along the diagonal. I tried using like a 2.5-inch size square and it just was a little too big. So I really feel that the 2-inch square is about as good as it's going to get. So for this first one, I'm going to show you how to put together. We have 5 whole ones. And then I've gone ahead and I had made 2 additional of the squares and I cut them into quarters. So you can see here that it's a total of 7 squares, 2 of which get cut in half and then in half again to make quarters. And these are, I guess you would call square quarters. I mean, it's just cut, very parallel to the straight edges here. So we'll start off with this. This particular one that I'm going to make, I'm using the Emerald Gemstone collection as the papers. And I have this kind of dark, has a very tonal stripe to it. The other side is this more tonal blue with the gem sketch on it. So I'm going to scoot this over to the side. And to put this border together on this particular page, I am showing it just built on this page. I could actually just build it on a strip of paper, and I might actually do that once I get my, once I make the border. I may actually cut it from this page. I'm not 100% sure yet on this one. But to put this together, what I've got is I've got this paper. I've got it lined up on my 13 by 13 mat. I'm going to go ahead, and this border is built. I'm going to build it over here on the left side, and I'm going to measure in 1.5 inches, and I'm going to draw a line with my pencil. And I can have the pencil line be a little bit dark. I'm working with a dark paper, so it's hard for me. It's going to be a little more challenging for me to see that pencil line unless I make it kind of bold. If you have a lighter, like I do have somewhere a white photo marking pencil, that would be a great one to use on here. But nothing too crazy because chances are you won't see it, but it is, you could potentially see it depending on how you put your pieces on here. But I'm going ahead and I'm marking, it's 1.5 inches in from the side, and I've marked a straight line down here. So my first piece that I'm going to go ahead and put on here, I'm going to use some repositionable adhesive. I'm going to line up this point over here at 6 inches, and then my top and bottom angles on my straight line that's 1.5 inches in. This gives me a little bit of space over here. I've got about 1/8 of an inch. And then I would have, if I was to measure over to 3 inches, I probably would have the same, you know, I'm just shy of 3 inches on that side. And I'm going to continue to use my whole squares and stack them on top of each other. Going ahead and taking the time to make sure I line them up as, you know, as good as possible. I want to have a nice corner here that'll show as to why in a few minutes. And I'm going to go all the way through the top. It's going to overhang a little bit up here. I'll trim it off later. And since this one I don't have the line continuing up out of the page, I'm just going to kind of eyeball a little bit. I've got the repositionable adhesive. If I need to make some adjustments, I can do that. Continuing down off the bottom of the page. So the goal with these nested squares is really to give you some pieces, ways to do just things with your trimmer, and paper to create some border details. It's sometimes fun to kind of put your punches aside and just play with your trimmer a little bit. There's lots of ways you can do that. So now these pieces that I had cut in half, remember these were at one point had been a full square just like this. I trimmed them into quarter pieces. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set these in to the corners as such. This is a quilting technique. I cannot for the life of me remember what the quilting technique is called, but it's based on a quilting technique. They did a little bit more fancy with some of the squares, actually quartering all the squares and then placing them on there. I am just doing the one part of it with these quarter squares placed in. So that is a fun option to do here. And so you can see here, I want to make sure I have a nice tight corner. So I may have to make a little bit of an adjustment here at the top to get that angle just right so that I'm nice and tight as I come into that quarter. And I would just keep building this down all the way to the bottom. I'm using the Platinum Shimmer and Navy cardstock. I kind of just picked out these colors because they look great with the Emerald Gemstone collection. But I just kind of like the navy and the silver together. It has a little bit of fun, shiny, it's pretty. You could use whatever colors you want. I alternated 2 colors. You could use 4 different colors. You know, pick whatever really goes with your photos or papers that you're using. So there you go. You can see how that was built all the way down the side. It's about 3 inches, which is a great size for a border. You still have a lot of room over here. You could, of course, mirror things. I could trim this off and then build this border on something else. This is a, you know, really has a narrow scope of colors here with just the silver and the navy. So if you're bringing in other colors, you could certainly do that in various ways. So that's the first option that I show in the directions. The next set, the next border is, there's 2 options to kind of go with here. So one of the options that we're going to do is I would show you is, I'm actually just going to flip this paper around really quick and kind of show you what I'm doing on the other side. So for this option, I've taken that square and I cut it on the diagonal. So I've just put in my trimmer on the diagonal and I cut it into half. So now I have 2 triangles. So what I'm doing here is a direction to show you. I am going to actually start building on the very edge with my triangles. So you can see here how this would start to go. Now, one of the things I want to show is that when I was building this, I wasn't quite keen on it just being right up against the edge. I wanted to bump it in just a little bit. I don't know, for some reason it just felt more finished. So in this particular case, I'm just going to use a small, I think this is 3/4 of an inch, and a small little section here. So yeah, that was 3/4 of an inch. of a piece of cardstock on that side. I am using a different color. This is deep sea green. And then you would just build those pieces as such. Go ahead and hear everything down. I'm going to show you a different thing to do with these pieces. So that's why I'm not actually gluing them into place. And you would come along as such and have just this fun triangle border here. In the directions, I'm going to show you real quick what you can do. I'm going to pull up on this other side. I'm going to pull up these triangle pieces here, and they would nestle right down in here as an option. So you can see that it's just, this kind of how you just piece things together. These are some basic shapes, triangles and squares. We've given the squares some additional detail by doing the nested square. So it has that kind of bold color pattern in there. And you can see how this kind of is working together. So this would be another, just a very different kind of a pattern. It's actually, as you can see, it's half, it was kind of inspired by realizing if I cut those pieces in half, you can see you'd have these sides mirror each other. So the last one I want to show you how to do is using, we're going to go back to using just these triangle pieces that we cut. So obviously, if you're wanting to make these various borders, you're going to have to make different sets of the squares. So maybe you'll play around with the colors to make one type of border, play around with the other to do the different borders. So for this next one I'm going to show you, I am going to actually go ahead and I'm going to use a piece of cardstock that I've trimmed to 2 inches. So this is 2 inches wide by 12. I'm using deep sea green here. I really like how it works. So I think it's actually dark sea green. I like that dark sea green with the navy and the silver. And it's also then going to carry over to being able to use in the gemstone, emerald gemstone collection. So for this particular layout, we're going to go ahead and we will start at the bottom. And I would dry fit this before you start putting these pieces into place. And we're really just going to alternate back and forth. So I've got my piece, my 2 inches wide is really generous. I've got to have a room for basically a grout line between my pieces. And I'm just going to keep building up the border. And I do know at the bottom, I will need to have a half piece. And I'm going to go ahead and bring it all the way to the bottom. It is flush down here at the end, and I would just keep building up. And I can't remember, I think there is a piece that is, I think I need to maybe come in at my 6-inch line, which is here. So I'm going to go ahead and actually, you will have one piece centered at 6 inches. So go ahead, and that would probably be the best, that would be the first one you'd place. And then you can kind of fit the other ones in, but you will have one piece that comes right in at that 6-inch line. And then the other pieces are placed in. So you can see, you will need, I believe for this particular border, you needed a total of 1, 2, 3, and then 4 total of those squares make this particular border. And that is indicated on the directions that you need the 4 of the squares to make this border, to make one border. So if you wanted to make 2 for your page, that would be, you need a total of 8 of the squares. The nice thing about this particular border is it's 2 inches, which to me is kind of a magical number when it comes for my, when it comes to those things, because with a 2-inch border, I don't have to do a whole lot of trimming to get a lot of photos on the page. So you can, the 2-inch, when you put a 4x6, you know, if you imagine that this is my page and I bring it over here to the side, I'm going to lay it in between 6 and 8 inches. I can easily get 3 horizontal images. And then I can get 2 vertical here, and I can keep that 2-inch border here in the middle. And so you can play around with how it's located in there. So the 2-inch borders are really nice, especially if you do want to get a lot of pictures on there. This border would work great because it's decorative without being too much of an attention grabber. It's got a fairly bold pattern to it, but it's I won't say it's pattern neutral, but it's a very consistent pattern all the way through it. So it would be a nice complement to photos. Give yourself some interest there with that border, but nothing that's going to really detract too much from your photos themselves. So I hope you have a chance to try it. Like I said, you play around with the shapes a little bit. It's a great technique to try. And I'd love to see whatever you create with it. So go ahead and share those into the group. Thanks for watching.